In this session, I'm going to show you how to configure the observer, which will enable you to make use of the automatic failover feature. So let's get on with it. I've already installed the software on all three my servers, my primary, my standby, and then a third server where I've got the central console and the observer running from. I've also started all the processes on each. So you can see that this is a whole new setup. So I'm going to add my primary. And it will open up manage configurations. Now your first instinct would be to go and click on this new thing. Okay, it doesn't quite work like that. For the observer to be able to work, we need a configuration with a standby database. Then we can configure it and we can start monitoring. Okay, so it's a little bit, you need to understand the order in which things are happening here. So I'm going to go and do my normal DDC creation as I would normally do. If you've already got a configuration all good, then you can just go ahead and create, set up your observer. But in our case, we need to get all the prerequisites in place. So I've got my DDC, it's busy creating, and then thereafter we'll start the creation of the standby database. And then I'll fast forward so we can go straight to the configuration of the observer, and then from there we're going to look in more detail around the failover, the automatic failover. At this stage, you can see the creation of the standby database completed successfully. So we will go back to our manage configurations. And as you can see, it says there's nothing available from the observer side. So now we are ready to configure this observer component. So we're going to click on new, and then we're going to give the Dbvisit observer address, and this is the server where I have installed the observer component and started the process. Then it's making use of the default port there, 10853, and then the passphrase is by default admin 900, and we say save, and you can see, oh okay, something is happening. It has also changed somewhat here, looking good, but we need to now tell the observer start monitoring this configuration. So we're going to click on it. And there's a couple of settings, basic settings we can start off with. First of all, we've got the polling. So it is in seconds. And that's how frequently the observer will check on your configuration in seconds. Okay. Then you've got retries, and that's the maximum number of communication attempts before the observer declares an emergency and tells your system what to do, whether to do an automatic failover depending on the mode it is, or whether to do a dry run, a manual one if you are still in testing mode. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, let's do the polling in, for test purposes, 20 seconds. This is not advisable. We usually go for about 120 seconds. And then the retries, that's the maximum times it attempts to contact it. So let's make it less for our purposes and make it like 3. So now you can have it in either manual mode or failover mode. Now, manual mode is when you are still in testing phase and you don't want an activation to actually happen should these conditions be met. So you still want to suss it out. So you just want information. However, if you want the real deal and you are saying, cool, let's go for it, you put it in failover mode and then things will start happening and you'll be amazed. But for now, let's put it in manual mode and see what happens. So we're going to say, save the settings. You can see if we're going to click on this now, it will stop the monitoring, okay? And then if you look here, there's your settings, and then you also have advanced settings, okay? But we're not going to go into that now. So let's simulate something and see what happens. So let's go to our database actions and go and stop our primary database. So let's do that and say stop. Cool. You can see something immediately happens here in the alert history view. Let's click on it and see. Okay, we've got attempt 1 of 3. So things are happening. We've got the second attempt. Remember our settings earlier? 20 seconds in polling, and then the number of retries is 3. So let's see what happens. Once it reaches 3 of 3, it's now 2 of 3. It stops monitoring. Let's click on it. And now you can go and put and say, for example, this is a dry run. No action was taken. See the log file for files for more information. So, and it will say it's marked as seen. So don't worry about this. So this is when we run in manual mode. So it didn't really go and do something. Okay, so we are now going to go and just start our primary. And then we're going to do the actual automatic failover. And we want to see that in action. So this was just a dry run to see, hey, things are happening. It pops out these alerts, etc. So we're going to go back to manage configurations. Because we had that outage, the monitoring by the observer stopped. So we need to start the monitoring again. And now we're going to go to our settings and we're going to say, okay, polling every 20 seconds, retries, try it for 3 times. Maybe we can do it 4 times because it happened so quickly. And then we can say fail over mode. So that means that we're asking the observer, as soon as you've reached these conditions, please start an automatic activation. Now, you can also go into the advanced observer settings and you can even configure email notification or through Slack. Lots of companies make use of Slack. So you can have that notification enabled as well. And then we've got another option where you may specify custom user scripts which will be executed once the observer polling interval, in addition to the Dbvisit observer's own checks, will then kick in. So Dbvisit observer can use the exit codes provided by these scripts to make a decision on whether an emergency has occurred or not. So you can then go and specify this, and you can read more about this functionality in the user guide. There's also rule priority, so you will always, decide whether you only want to do the observer check. If you've got a user script, it will always take preference, and then you've got the either, which will be or, and both, which will be and. But for our demonstration purposes, we are just going to go back and say, let's do this, make it 4, put it in failover mode. So we want action to be taken, and save the settings. Okay, we are busy monitoring. Everything looks great. So now we're going to simulate an emergency. The observer is going to see if it can connect and communicate with the primary. If not, it is going to start with those interactions to see the polling and the retries. So let's stop the primary. As you can see, it's stopped now. Let's go back, manage configurations. Immediately you see, oh, there's the first check that is done. So it's not monitoring at this point. And let's go and have a look. So we've got the first attempt of 4, 20 seconds, then the second one. You can see the second one. And so it carries on. And as soon as it hits that number 4, it stops monitoring and it says, do your action. What must we do? And depending on the mode we are in here, it will take action. So we at 3 of 4. What happens when we hit 4 of 4? 4 of 4. And look at this. Automatic failover mode. What is happening here? It is actually activating your standby database based on the information that you've provided. How awesome is this? So it's all good and well. It's just very important that you make sure that this is indeed what you want, because you don't want false alarms. So testing through this manual mode is very important, and we'd suggest you, recommend you go for it and do this and play around. Remember, these polling intervals are just for our testing. We recommend you don't go lower than 120, and then of course the retries are the number of communication attempts. So this concludes the functioning of the observer and how it ties into promoting the automatic failover based on the settings to be able to help you to get back online ASAP in the event of an emergency. Thank you.